found over the years. And most of you know, by definition, a stereotype takes something that has some truth and then pushes it a little bit to the edges. And when it comes to communication, I know this is going to be a shocker, but men and women are actually different. And the way that we communicate is different. And the first video clip I'm going to show you pokes quite a bit of fun at men. And I'm okay with this. We earned it. We deserve some of it. And then the second video clip is going to poke fun at the ladies a little bit. And then after we've done a little bit of that, then we'll deal with some of the serious stuff. But communication is not an easy thing.
Men, how many times has this happened to you?
You know, our babies sleep really, really good.
Or this.
Make sure Timmy wears the blue shirt.
Or even this.
For my birthday, which is next month, I really like
Do you have trouble listening or retaining information from your wife? You could be suffering from spousal selective listening, or SSL. With SSL, valuable input is intercepted or scrambled before it reaches the critical learning center of the membrane. Virtually anything can trigger, like sports, food, even shiny objects with buttons. Fortunately, there is help with Heritol. Containing a rare group with an exotic name, Heritol helps men focus and listen to valuable female input, even pick up on those subtle hints.
These are exactly the earrings I wanted. How did you know?
Thanks, Heritol. Now I can hear it all.
Heritol is not been tested or approved by the regulatory agency. Side effects of Heritol include minor severe headaches and spontaneous reduction. Use caution when using Heritol. Heritol is a cancer drug. Do not use around children or trust it if possible. And take over switching transform for 4 hours. Consult your doctor immediately before your wife is this is the standard of your relationship. New lines for their most should not take the problem. Heritol, the preferred selection or solution for selective hearing.
All right, ladies, now it's your turn.
There's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
You do have a nail in your head.
It's not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if you got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't. If that is what you need, I think what you need is to get the nail.
See, you're not listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like, there's this achy, I don't know what it is. None of my sleeping very well at all. None of my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
Ow!
Come on, if you would just.
Don't.
Oh, that one got me again. I'm crying up here. The truth is, as much as we poke fun, communication is challenging. And I can't see my notes, my eyes have teared up. This afternoon we're going to be discussing some of the challenges to communication and some of the proven ways that you're able to communicate in an effective way. Communication is key to relationships and to relationships
want to give that quick answer, that quick jab back if we're met with resistance or met with confrontation. But we want to keep that in the back of our minds. Our words are important. How we say them are just as important as what we say. And they even have eternal significance. So we want to keep that in mind.
We're going to spend the first part of this presentation dealing with two skills that we would call relationship changing skills. And those skills are assertiveness and active listening. Any relationship we're in, we want the other person to be able to hear what we're saying, and we also want to be understood. And so we're going to focus in on ways that you can talk to make sure that you're clear in what you're saying. And then we're also going to talk about the other half of that, which is listening, how to make sure that you are listening. These two skills can be relationship changing skills if they're ones that you don't currently have, or if you have them and are not currently using them. And then we're going to end this portion of the presentation with, I don't remember what it's called, 10 something.
10 steps of communication to improve intimacy, I think.
I wonder, I
Something
couldn't
like
remember.
that.
That was long.
It is. It's not quite like that. Something like that.
All right. The first section that we're going to talk about is assertiveness.
And that is defined as the ability to express your feelings and ask for what you want, for what you need and want. Now, sometimes assertiveness has gotten a bad reputation. People think that if I'm being assertive, then I am imposing my will or my need on another person. And we might be afraid to say what we want or need because we might feel that we're being viewed as being selfish. But if assertiveness is applied in a healthy and respectful manner, it's actually a very valuable tool in communication. Oftentimes we just want the other person to know what we're thinking or know what we need or want. And we say, why isn't he doing such and such? He should just know that I need that or know that I want that. But really, if we think about it, the other person can't know what it is that's in our minds. They can't know what we need or what we want if we haven't expressed it to them. So even though sometimes assertiveness, it can be used in an improper way, if we choose to use it properly, it's actually a healthy tool to foster communication. So we have Hagar and Helga here, and Hagar comes up and sees Helga sitting there kind of in a pose with her nose in the air, so he knows something's going on, and so he asks the question, what are you mad about? And she just explodes everything, and he's knocked off his feet and says, then could you be a little more specific? She's sort of being assertive, but not really in a constructive way, right? She's saying, everything's bothering me, but that's not really helping to have him understand what's going on. So obviously, we aren't going to want to do that, but let's see what we can do. In assertiveness, we want to use I statements. It's a statement about how you personally are feeling. We want to communicate facts without placing blame on the other person. So you might have heard I don't remember if I have it in here. Yes. There you can see the I feel blank because blank, and then what I need is blank. I'm going to go back one slide, but I wanted you to see that. So we're stating how we're feeling about what's going on, communicating facts about what you're experiencing, but not making assumptions on how they're seeing it, not making assumptions about their intentions of what's going on, and not placing blame on them. So you want to take that responsibility. This is how I'm experiencing what's going on, instead of putting on the other person. So here again is that example, I feel. So example might sound something like this. I feel scared when you don't let me know you're going to be late coming home because I'm afraid you've been in an accident and are hurt. It would help me to not worry if you would send me a quick text letting me know you'll be late. So again, it's This is how I'm feeling when this happens, and it would help me if this could happen instead. So it's not saying you're being inconsiderate, it's not doing anything towards the other person, it's all about how I'm experiencing this. In contrast to using I statements, we want to, of course, then avoid the you statements. You statements are accusatory, and they create that defensiveness. If someone comes up to you and say, you did, and fill in the blank, or you're so, and fill in the blank, you automatically push back from them, and you want to start defending yourself instead of listening to what they're trying to say. So an example might be, you make me so mad, you never let me know when you're going to be coming home late. You're so selfish, you never think of me sitting here at home wondering if you've been in an accident. So contrast that to how we said it before, which is more likely to receive a welcoming response and a willingness to work together. The I statement, where it's letting them know how you're feeling instead of blaming them for causing you to feel this way. It might be how you feel, scared and nervous and frustrated, but the way we communicate those feelings has a lot to do with the response that we're going to get back. And when we do use you statements, we close that door of communication. We make it harder to move forward and find a solution. So here is another example of assertiveness. I'm feeling out of balance. While I love spending time with you, I also want to spend time with my friends. I would like us to find some time to talk about this. Again, it's letting them know that you're having a conflict, personally maybe, and you want to figure out how it can work for both of you instead of just blaming them. Excuse me. And again, at the end, there's that statement of what I need, some time for us to talk about it. And a final example here might sound like, I want to take a ski vacation next winter, but I know you like to go to the beach. I'm confused about what choice we should make. Again, letting them know your feelings and that you're looking for a way to work out a solution for both of you. Before we move on to active listening, I'd like to take a look at benefits of assertiveness. Assertiveness allows sharing of feelings, needs, and wants. It avoids making your spouse feel attacked. It keeps the doors of communication open and enables your spouse to begin to meet your needs and wants. When we're able to verbalize what it is we need, then they're aware, and then they can work towards meeting those needs for us. So let's move on to active listening.
These are some skills that I've taught for quite a few years in the Prepare and Rich material that I was trained in as a young pastor I mentioned earlier this morning. And it's good to be able to speak clearly so people understand you, but the other half of that is somebody needs to be listening. And so as a spouse, you need to be both a good communicator and a good listener. Active listening is defined as the ability to let your partner know you understand them by restating their message. Ironically, many years ago when I was in college, the person who first taught me these skills about assertiveness and active listening, I saw him a number of years later, and maybe I caught him at an inopportune moment, but I went up to say hi, and he stood right in front of me, and he did everything but look at me. He was so distracted by everything going around, it was clear by his body language that he wasn't paying any attention. And the truth is that our body language has a lot to do to show somebody that we're listening. And you know pretty good if somebody's actually paying attention to you or not, based on not just what they are saying or not saying, but based on their body language. For active listening, a good verse that goes with that is Proverbs 17:27, and it says, "He who has knowledge spares his words, and a man of understanding is of a calm spirit." I think some of you have probably heard that God gave us one mouth and 2 ears, and they jokingly suggested that means we need to listen twice as much as we talk. Most of us talk twice as much as we listen. But it's good, it's wise to spend time listening to make sure you understand, even if you don't agree with what's being said. Active listening, quote here from somebody's name that I can't pronounce anymore. We hear only half of what is said to us, understand only half of that, believe only half of that, and remember only half of that. I don't know if this is scientifically proven, but probably something like that is probably true. There's a lot that we filter out that we don't take in. In fact, most of the time, if you're honest with yourself, when somebody's talking to you, you're spending the time, instead of really listening to them, formulating what you want to say back to them. And then if they're still talking, once you've decided what you want to say back to them, you're wondering why they keep talking. When are they going to stop so you have a chance to say what you want to say? And those are some signs, if we're honest with ourselves, that we're not really listening. We've already decided what we feel about what they're saying and how we're going to respond. When it comes to listening, it is a whole body experience. Your eyes, your ears, your body language. I mean, if I talk to my wife and I stand like this to her, now if I'm working on the refrigerator to fix it, she's going to be understanding. But if she's trying to tell me something important and I don't have a good excuse, she'd probably rather me talk to her this way. I don't remember where in my notes it is. I'll say it now. We've both discovered that in order for me to hear what she has to say, we're best served if I will look her in the eye. And if she doesn't have my eye contact, she doesn't necessarily have my attention. And so she has worked to get my eye contact, and I have worked to try to pull away from what I'm doing and look her in the eye. And when we're looking in the eye, it's much harder. And she says to him, "Your body language suggests you've lost interest," as he's flopped over on the desk. I'd like to suggest an experiment that you can try, and you can try it all kinds of places. Church is a place that you can try it. Now, a lot of you, some of you are up on the platform from time to time, but a lot of you don't see things that Pastor Roel and I see. And there's a lot of good things we see, but there's a lot of other things. But people, when they're presenting, they make eye contact with people that are making eye contact with them. And I can assure you that if you sit up during a presentation and you open your eyes up and you look in the eyes of the speaker, you watch how many times their eyes start to bounce to you. And then if you put your head down a little bit and you turn your eyes away, but where you can still in your peripheral vision see the speaker is going to stop bouncing to you as much. And if you have 4 or 5 people that were in on it together, you could probably make the speaker look in the congregation where you wanted to. I don't know, we've never tried an experiment like that. But it works in a classroom setting, it works at a table at a restaurant. If you went in advance and only one person made eye contact with the waiter would spend all of their time looking at that person. But if all of you look up and make eye contact with the waiter or waitress, they'll bounce their eyes around. We don't even think about it, but it's something that is extremely important in communication. Let's see if everybody's eyes come up now. I didn't talk about sleeping people. I didn't talk about people on their phones. Pastor Roel never sees that during church, ever. Boy, you guys are cynical about that. Here we've got a comic with Andy. And she's walking in the hall, and then she calls to her husband Andy, and she says, "I'm going around to my mother's now. Are you listening?" From behind the newspaper, he mutters, "Yes." She says, "I'll be gone for a couple of hours. Are you sure you're listening?" And from behind the newspaper again, "Yes." And then she's gone. He's behind the newspaper. And finally, he puts the newspaper down and he calls to his wife and says, "Flo, are you in the kitchen? Can you bring me some tea?" Clearly, she never had his attention. Clearly, he wasn't actually listening to what was being said. Now, she could have made a little more effort articulate what the problem is, and the other one hasn't taken the time to listen to what the problem is, and oftentimes they're not even fighting about the same thing. Here's another comic. The counselor asks the husband and wife, he says, "How have things been since last week?" The husband says, "Well, we're talking." "Splendid," the counselor says. And then the husband says, "Well, talking was never the problem." The wife says, "Yes, neither of us have ever gotten around to listening." Then the counselor says, "Well, of course, talking is only part of the solution, isn't it? You have to listen to one another." Then the wife says, "Do you hear what the counselor said? It's all pointless unless you listen to me." She kind of got the point there. But it is pointless to communicate if the other person's not listening. In order for us to be effective in our communication, listening needs to be taking place. Now, Laurella gave some assertive statements, and I've got some examples of what those would look like with active listening. One example is of assertiveness, using an I statement, is "I'm feeling out of balance. Well, I love spending time with you. I also want to spend time with my friends, and I would like to find some time to talk about this." Now, the spouse who is doing active listening responds back and says, "I heard you say you're feeling out of balance and enjoy the time we spend together, but you should also like more time to be with your friends. You want to plan a time to talk about this." So what happens here is that most people don't take that step to restate what they've heard. Instead, they want to get right into the next point. The active listener does not have to like what they're hearing. They don't have to agree with what they're hearing. They don't have to support what they're hearing. But in order to get to a solution quicker, it is very important for them to make sure that they understand what they're hearing. They mirror it back to the speaker, and then the speaker can say, "Yes, that's exactly how I feel," or "No, that's not how I feel at all," and then they can try again. Once you get onto the same level playing field, then you're ready to move on to the next part of the argument. I see your name in the notes here. Did I skip something? No? Shall I move on? All right. I think that was code for I took her part. Another example, I want to take a ski vacation next winter, but I know you'd like to go to the beach. I'm feeling confused about what choice we should make. So that's a good assertive statement. It's an I statement. It's not a, "You always want to go to the," but instead this is what I want. And then the active listener would say, "I understand what you said. You are concerned because you want to go skiing next winter, but you think that I would rather go to the beach. Is that correct?" So they haven't solved the problem here, but they now know that they're both on the same page. Now they can get into discussing, is it going to be the beach? Is it going to be a ski hill? Or are they going to just stay home and not go anywhere? They can figure that out because they're now on the same page. Proverbs 18:13 says, "He who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and shame to him." That's kind of embarrassing. I think we do that a lot as humans. We answer before we've really listened. We prejudge and we move on.
Here's the phrase we were trying to think of. 10 communication skills to increase intimacy. So we looked at assertiveness and active listening. There I combined the two. Assertiveness and active listening closely, but they are part of a bigger list of communication skills. So now we're going to look at the whole list, 10 communication skills to increase intimacy.
All right, the first one is giving full attention to your partner when talking. Turn off the phone, shut off the television, make eye contact. We now have I've been saying 17. I've been saying 17 for a few months now. He's 16, but he turned 17 in November. And I heard of a group of businessmen who would go to a restaurant, and when they would get to the table, they would all take their cell phones out and they would put them in a stack in the middle of the table. And the goal was that they didn't have distraction from their cell phones and they could focus on each other. And the deal was whoever went for their cell phone first paid for the meal for everybody. And I thought that was brilliant, because how often have you been to I know you wouldn't do this yourselves, but how often have you been to a restaurant and you look at the people around you and they're at a table together and they're all looking at their phones and not at each other? I think that that's something in society that we have to battle. I am more prone to that than my wife is. She's not immune to it, but she's not as prone to it as I am. So I gave her permission to call a phone stack, and my son hates it. And sometimes I will initiate it. I'll just slide my phone to the center of the table, and then everybody, since he can't pay for the meal, I just stated whoever touches the phone first has to do the dishes. And that's usually my job. I usually touch the phone first at the end of the meal, and then my son immediately grabs his and runs away screaming. Not quite. I wish he was here for that. The point being that in relationships, we really need to give each other our full attention when it's time to communicate. Sure, there's time to go and read the news on your phone, or to, did you know you can make a phone call on a phone? You can make a phone call. But when you're trying to communicate with each other, you need to give full focus and attention on communicating. So skill number 1, give full attention.
Second skill is focus on the good qualities in each other and praise each other often.
Yes, thank you. Oh, you haven't said it.
It's easy to fall into the trap of finding the negative, seeing the things that are wrong or that we don't like about something or someone in their behavior. But when we do that, we get into this negative cycle and it ends up being repetitive. We only see the bad things instead of seeing the good things. So we have to be intentional about focusing on those good things, finding those good things, and then verbalizing them. Because you might see something nice about your spouse or notice something that they've done that you appreciate, but until we verbalize it to them, they won't know that we've seen it and appreciated about them. So praising one another often, and sometimes we shy away from that because we don't, we're counseled not to build up pride, but this is different than pride. This is that appreciation for acknowledgement for the good qualities in the other person that creates those positive feelings.
I was just going to add here, it comes from a different presentation we're doing today. Somebody was counseling a woman who really was not happy with her husband, and deservedly so. But she wanted to try and save the relationship, and the counselor said, you need to find something nice you can say about your husband. And she thought about it and thought about it. She finally said, well, he doesn't stink. That was her step. That's a step in the right direction. Hopefully she can get further than that. But we so often focus on the negative, focusing on the positive. Skill number 3, we spent a lot of time on that earlier in this presentation, but it's about assertiveness. Be assertive, share your thoughts, feelings, and needs. A good way to be assertive without being critical is to use I statements rather than you statements.
Skill number 4 is avoid criticism, and that obviously is tied with number 2, where we want to focus on the positive, but we also need to be intentional about avoiding criticism. Now, there are times where things have to be said, and I think that comes up next, but we want to look for ways to positively state what we need to say. If someone comes to you and is highly critical or criticizing of you, does that make you want to work with them to find a positive solution to the issue at hand? Generally not. We generally put up that wall and say, if you're going to talk to me that way, I don't want to work with you. So it builds that barrier to communication that we want to be bringing down.
The 5th skill says if you must criticize, balance it with many positive comments. And I don't know what the answer here is, but I've heard some people say for every 1 negative comment you make, you need 2 positive ones. And I've heard some say 5 positive and 8 positive or 22 positive. The truth is, in our culture in this day and age, you've got to have a lot of positives to make up for a negative. It's not a one-to-one. You can't say, you did a terrible job changing the oil in the car, you did a good job washing it. Even though those may both be true, it's not a one-on-one. So if you're in a situation where you do need to have some constructive criticism, you've got to make sure that you're filling the other person's love bank with lots of positive comments on a regular basis so that they can hear and know that you care about them and that you're not just there to tear them apart.
Guess I would just go off of the love bank a little bit more. If you were here earlier, you saw the fat bank when it's being filled with all those love deposits, and you saw the skinny bank when it doesn't have. If there's nothing in the bank, positives, love units being deposited regularly. If there is something that has to be addressed that may not be positive, there's cushion there to absorb that, to say, I know they care for me, I know they love me, but this does need some attention. There's more ability to receive that criticism when the general atmosphere is an atmosphere of love deposits. Skill number 6, listen to understand, not judge. And it's easy to hear something, see something, and make an automatic judgment about it, and have your opinion decided already before you actually hear the real meaning behind what the other person's trying to communicate to you. Excuse me. I'm sure most of us have heard the phrase, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So if we really take that to heart, we aren't going to judge before we hear what the other person has to say. We have to make, again, a conscious choice. We've been talking today a lot about choices that we're making. This is a conscious choice that we have to make. Am I going to shut down my understanding by making a judgment? Or am I going to be open to hearing actually the fullness of what the other person needs to tell me? Putting ourselves in their shoes, seeing how it is from their experience, from their perspective, instead of seeing it from my perspective and saying from over here it looks like this, but stepping into their space and saying, oh, it looks different from over here. So we have to consciously make that choice to not prejudge what we think they're going to tell us.
Skill number 7, we have also spent a lot of time on this. It goes back to active listening. So I'll just summarize it. Say skill 7, use active listening. Summarize your partner's comments before sharing your own reactions or feelings.
Skill number 8, avoid blaming each other and work together for a solution. What does the blame game do? They say, it's your fault this happened, or because you did that, this happened. What does that do to our desire to work together towards a good solution?
Because it's not defensive right away.
Right. You want to say, why did that because? And it had to be that way. And you start defending versus listening and working together. So, it makes us either defend or makes us give up and maybe go separate directions. And it's not helping us find those solutions to the conflict or issue at hand.
Skill number 9, I'll tell you what this is now, but we're going to come back to this, and this is what we're going to close with, is the 10-step approach. Skill number 9 is use the 10-step approach for problems that come up again and again. Use the 10 steps for resolving couple conflict. We haven't told you what all that means yet, but in just a couple minutes we're going to go through that, and we're going to use that to model what an argument or a disagreement could look like based on actual events.
Skill number 10 is seek counseling. If you are not able to resolve issues, seek counseling before they become more serious. There are times when we need help from the outside, and traditionally there's been kind of a stigma on that, and that we have felt that we should be able to address our own family needs within our family, but we at times need that outside help. In the workplace, we seek help. Successful people recognize that they need others to help them improve themselves. Sometimes we call them life coaches or mentors in life, and we seek that in our professional lives, and it's okay to seek that in our personal lives and in our marriages. Sometimes we need an outside perspective to help us solve those things that we're not able to handle ourselves. So I would encourage you, if you're finding that this just isn't working and you're not able to reach those understandings with each other, to talk to your pastor or a Christian counselor that can help steer you in the right direction and give you some more tools that can help you improve communication.
I think it's built into us to think we should be able to just do it ourselves. We should married for the first time, you've never been married before. What makes you think that you should know how to do marriage when you've never, I mean, there's not a manual. It's like when a new baby comes, you need help, you need guidance from people around you. So you find people that can provide answers to things you don't know about. All right, this is the homework section that I would encourage you to do. I'll go through this, and then we'll do that last sheet that you've got there. But what I would encourage you to do is to create a wish list, that you would sit down and use the positive I statements, and you would make a list of 3 things that you would like more of or less of in a relationship. And this is a time to use the assertive skills where you're not making the you statements, but you're making I statements. I would like more banana pudding at supper. That's an I statement, as opposed to the you never make me banana pudding. One of those is going to be received better than the other. And if you've got any banana pudding, just leave it in the back for me on the way out.
You can tell what you like.
I'm thinking about that. After you've made a list of 3 things that you like more of or less of in the marriage, then I would encourage you to go through the exercise of being assertive, sharing the statements, and having your partner use the active listening. So to make it very simple, I would come to Laurella and say, my first statement is, I would like more banana pudding at supper.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you would like to have more banana pudding at supper time.
She did it very well. She didn't say that was good for me. She didn't say it was bad for me. She didn't say she hates banana pudding. She didn't say she didn't judge. She just mirrored back, and now I'm able to say, no, what I really meant was I want butterscotch pudding. Or I could say, yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. And then we get into the discussion of that other stuff. But it's the practice of assertive statements and active listening. And then after you completed the wish list, go through the exercise. How good were you at being assertive? It sounds like it should be easy, but it's kind of hard sometimes for some of us to make assertive statements, to say the words, I want. And I think some of us falsely believe that Christians shouldn't say the words, I want. But I believe that's not true. I think that's how our partner knows what it is that we are interested in. Now, that doesn't mean we get everything we want, but in order to start the conversation, we need to be able to be assertive. And then ask the question, in what ways did each of you effectively use active listening skills? Now, I want to close this portion with the Bible verse, Psalm 19:14. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. God has blessed each of us with relationships, and it's valuable for us to learn how to communicate clearly so we can strengthen those relationships. I'm going to switch to the next presentation, and we will close with this presentation. This next presentation.
These are the 10 steps that we referred to just a couple minutes ago. Sometimes we have those issues that we think we've addressed, but they keep coming back. And we thought we had it solved, but something keeps bringing it back. And so that lets us know we haven't quite reached a solution that's workable. So that's what we're going to talk about.
All right. And we'll jump right in. Here's an example of maybe something not to do. Got this young man here, says never go to bed angry, and then he says stay awake and plot your revenge.
It's like he's doing the knife.
Yes. Probably an example of what not to do. And here we have, I can never remember her name. Is she Irma? Irma, what's his name? Irma said to her husband, I support recycling bottles, cans, and paper, but what good does it do to keep recycling old arguments? And I think in marriage we have a lot of that. When you don't know how to resolve the issue doesn't go away on its own. And so you may keep bringing it up for a while, but until you can figure out how to solve it in a healthy way, it's going to just keep being recycled. And we need to figure out a healthy way to deal with those. One more video clip. This is an absurd video clip. I still like the nail in the forehead one better, but this is an example of an argument that gets a lot of hand. That's pretty completely absurd.
Fifteen 17 says, better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fatted calf with hatred. No matter how good the surroundings are, if our relationships are not positive and I can't think of the word I want, but where it's not a good relationship, it doesn't matter what's around. It's still painful inside. We haven't figured out how to make those relationships work well. We all have been in conflict, and we know how difficult it is, but we'd like to look at some ways we can work through it. Sorry, my eyes are not as good as they used to be. Proverbs 17:1 says, better is a time or so of quietness than a house full of feasting with strife. God's original plan didn't include conflict, didn't include the strife that we have to experience in this human, sinful world. But again, we're going to look at some things we can do. So we're going to lay down some ground rules. First, rules for conflict. Every fight needs some rules, right? So here we're going to start with the don'ts. The first is never threaten divorce. When that's on the table, there's no commitment. You look at the person across and say, this person's not going to work through this with me. They're not dedicated or committed to this. So am I going to want to put forth the effort if they're going to bail out on me? Probably not. So the first one is don't threaten divorce. The second is don't confront in public. You know, when someone has criticized you in public, how that feels. You get embarrassed, you get defensive, and it doesn't make you trust them to protect you, to protect that relationship. And so you're less willing or interested in working with them. Third is never nag. Nagging is easy to do because you think, you just need to do it, just do it. So get on it, do it. You want to keep after them. But nagging, if we really think about it, if we're nagged about something, it really doesn't make us want to do that thing anymore. So applying that to the other person as well. Fourth is never verbally attack. We've talked in our previous session about that, what that verbal explosiveness does to the relationship. And it builds that wall. When you're attacked, verbally or otherwise, you defend. You put up a wall, you put up a barrier to protect yourself. So that verbal attack is not conducive to communication either. And the last one here is never resurrect the past. When we do that, we distract from the current issue. We're overshadowing what we're trying to address by things that have happened in the past, so we're not able to actually focus on what needs to be taken care of now. And it also does give evidence that there's been forgiveness. If I'm bringing up something in the past, it doesn't tell him that I've let that go. It doesn't say I've forgiven that, I'm moving on to new and better places if I keep bringing it up. And it also doesn't allow us to move forward. We get stuck in things of the past instead of making that positive change to move us forward. So here's the never, but now we get to look at what we should do.
I wanted to make an iPad joke with your needing glasses. You've already got the big iPad between the two of us. They do sell a bigger one though. Maybe I get a new iPad out of this.
No, after age 25, my eyes just, I can't see anymore.
The first one for things to do when having a conflict is to ask permission to address the conflict. And this may sound like a bit of a strange thing, but when your spouse is in the middle of changing the oil in the car, or making macaroni and cheese on the stove, or at the computer composing an email, that may not be the best time to just plop down next to them and let them have it. It's probably good to say, there's an issue we need to address. When is a good time to talk? And so that's the first one. Ask permission to address the conflict. Maybe not in order of importance, but another thing that's important is to invite God to be part of your discussion. If both of you are Christians, you can do that together. If only one of you is a Christian, maybe that's something you do silently or by yourself or beforehand, but always invite God to be part of the discussion. Another one is being willing to admit when you're wrong. In almost every circumstance, as much as we don't like to hear it, we have contributed to the problem. Now, maybe occasionally it was only 1%, but we need to be willing to own whatever part is our part. So be willing to admit when you're wrong. Another thing to always do is listen. We spent a fair amount of time this afternoon talking about listening, and that's going to come up again. Keep your arguments out of the bedroom. The bedroom is for many things, but it shouldn't be the place where you worry. It shouldn't be the place where you fret and where you fight, but it should be a place where you're able to rest and take it easy to enjoy. So keep your arguments out of the bedroom. Stick to the subject. When you've got a problem, your husband always parks the truck in the grass and it's destroying the yard. This is not the time to complain about the way he talks to the kids and the way that he loads the dishwasher and all the other things. So what is the exact issue you're going to talk about, and stick to the subject. Maybe you've got to deal with those other things, but let's not do it all at once. Let's choose one thing and focus on that. Deal with disagreements as soon as possible. This is a positive thing to do for a number of reasons. One, if you don't deal with it quickly, it festers and it turns oftentimes worse than it is. We're going to dig into that one a little bit more, so I'm not going to say more now, but decide on a plan, and this is what we're going to talk about now. The 10 steps for resolving couple conflict gives us a plan. These 10 steps come from the Prepare a Rich material, and it's an important reminder that even when you're mad at your spouse, they are your teammate, they are your friend, you're supposed to be working together, you're not enemies here. And so stepping back and saying, we both want a solution. We don't want this problem, we don't want this fight. We're going to work on this together. And then the two of you can come to the table and go through some steps. How can we figure this out? So my wife and I had an issue that is bigger to some than to others, but we had a problem, and I didn't even know it. And that was part of the problem. And this problem has to do with the usage of the kitchen towels in the kitchen. And so we're going to talk through, as we go through these 10 steps, how these steps can be used, and maybe we'll come up with a solution for the kitchen towel. Step number 1.
Set a time and place for the discussion. Now, some of us want to deal with stuff right now, right this very minute. Others of us need time to think and process and really figure out what it is that we need or want in this particular situation. So for those who want to talk about it right now, it's hard to wait, but for those who need time to really think about what they want to say and what it is they really need, there's a difference there. So you have to come to that agreement when and where we're going to have this discussion. Now, I tend to be one that needs time to think about it, and he tends to be the one that wants to talk about it right now.
Right now.
And if I'm pressured to talk about it right now, I feel like I don't know, I can't do that. I'm thinking what I want to say or what it is that I really am needing. So it's hard for me to have to stop right then and talk about it, because I have to process it first. And so that's been a learning experience in our relationship.
So if I want to come to a conclusion on a situation that's between us, I have to be a little patient, because not only do I want to talk about it now, I probably would like but she's not there. I've got to back off, I've got to give her some space to get ready to have a conversation about whatever it is.
So for the sake of our time right now, we're going to talk about it now, but something that I could say is that I know you want to talk about it right now, but I really would need some time to think about this. And we agree to meet at 7 o'clock tomorrow or 7:30 tomorrow after the kids get to bed. That lets me have time to think about it, and it lets him know that we're not just going to sweep it under the rug and forget about it. So it meets both of our needs to be able to set that time and place for the discussion. But for right now, we're going to talk about it now.
The opposite of me, which is I want to talk to it now, is the person that wants to put it off and, well, actually, we probably don't actually ever need to talk about it. And the truth is somewhere in the middle. And so what she's just described about setting a time is ideal. It gives the person who wants to push it off a little bit some time to gather their thoughts, and the person that wants to talk about it and talk about it now knows that it's coming. And so, good step number one. Step number two is to define the problem or issue of disagreement. This is where the assertiveness and the active listening we've been talking about really comes into play, using the I statements and focusing in on the problems. And so we'll give a little sample here. There's something going on in the kitchen, the towels. What exactly is your concern?
I feel concerned because it seems like you use the kitchen towels for anything and everything.
So what I hear you saying is that you don't want me to use the kitchen towels.
Well, I'm kind of uncertain as to how you're using them. You know, I have to make sure they're clean for food prep, so if you just mop the floor with the towel, whatever then is on the floor is in our food, and I'm not sure that we want that.
So what I hear you saying is you don't want me to use the kitchen towels.
What I really want is that for the kitchen towels to only be used for drying clean hands. After you wash your hands, then use the towel to dry your hands.
So what I'm hearing you say is you only want me to use the towels if I have first washed my hands before I touch the towel.
Yes, only for clean hands.
All right. Now I will critique myself and say the very first time when I restated what she said, I did a terrible job. I read into her motives, and I just assumed she didn't want me to use the towel. But I gave her a chance to feed back to me and say what she was meaning. We went back and forth. I have not said that I think that it's okay that she doesn't want me to use the towels. I haven't said that I think it's a terrible idea. I haven't made any judgments, even if I feel some judgments. I haven't said any. We've just gone back and forth, and we've come to the conclusion at this point she doesn't want me to use the towel unless I've just washed my hands and my hands are clean. Now, I'm not going to ask the people to vote and how many people agree with you on this plan. All right, so now we go to step 3, because we have defined the problem or the issue here. Step number 3.
So here we have Blondie and Dagwood, and we're going to talk about how each has contributed to the problem. So they're at breakfast, and she says, "Wasn't that a silly argument we had last night?" And he says, "It sure was, but this morning I'm willing to admit that I was wrong." And she says, "Oh good, then it's all settled. I'm willing to admit you were wrong too." Not quite sure she has the right idea here, but we do, like Adam said earlier, most of the time we contribute, both parties contribute on some level to the issue that you're trying to solve. So be willing to look at that and admit, yes, I have a part in this as well. We want to come to this discussion with an open mind, recognizing our part, but we also want to remember that we're working together as a team. So when the team members recognize where their weaknesses are or where their part of the issue is, we're able to work together to find that solution easier.
So for this step where we have to talk about how we each contribute to the problem, I have to come clean here. I do view the towel differently than you do. If I've made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and I've got some strawberry jam on my hand, I do use the towel towel to wipe the strawberry jam off my hand, and so I contribute to that problem that way. I have been known to spill milk on the floor, grab a hand towel and wipe the milk up, but I do put it in the hamper when I'm done. So I do think that those are some examples. So I do contribute to this problem.
I recognize that I'm probably a germaphobe, and I am a clean freak, and so I like things probably more clean than the average person. So I can see that maybe my expectations are a little higher than maybe need be. And maybe I'm being a little inflexible because it's reasonable to grab something and clean up the milk. So maybe I'm being a little inflexible there.
So we've set a time, we've defined the problem, we have both listed ways that we contribute to this problem, and now on step 4, we list past attempts to resolve the issue that were not successful. And so when I look at this situation and try and figure out past attempts that were not successful, I would say this has not been my problem, I've not been concerned about it, so I have done nothing to try to solve this problem.
And I've tried things you're not supposed to do, like nagging, don't use the towel. Or I tried explaining why I use the towels the way I do, but because he doesn't see it that way, it's not been something on his radar. And we've tried using 2 different towels. Mine's on the left and his on the right, but we can never remember whose is where.
I didn't care, so I didn't pay attention.
And so the problem kept coming back because we never found a solution yet that would solve my concerns over how the towel is used.
So listing past attempts to resolve the issues that were not successful. Thomas Edison, I believe, famously failed dozens, if not hundreds of times to make a light bulb that worked. And he said that he didn't really fail, he found a whole lot of ways that didn't work. And so trying to list things, we've listed things that contribute to the problem, we've listed ways that were not successful. Now step number 5, brainstorming.
That would be thinking of 10 or more new ways to resolve the conflict. You probably all heard the term brainstorming, where you just get out ideas. It doesn't matter what they are, you just put them down on paper or write them out, however. And this isn't the time for judging them or evaluating them. It's just getting the ideas out there. They may seem ridiculous or outlandish or impossible, but at this stage in the process, we're not evaluating or judging whether we think they'll work or whether we think they're even a good idea. Just get the ideas out there. So you want at least 10 ideas.
I always like the brainstorming process because it's supposed to be, like Laurella said, a judgment-free zone. And so I love to throw at least one totally absurd idea out there to see if the person I'm brainstorming with is going to truly be judgment-free. Because there is a place where you evaluate, it's not during brainstorming. But we'll brainstorm on this. Maybe one solution to this problem is we could buy a man towel.
One solution is kitchen is off limits to people who aren't making food.
Maybe another solution is that we could have you give up on your idea of how towels are supposed to be used.
I know, we could have color-coded towels. Mine are one color, yours are another color.
We could get out a new towel every time a man enters the kitchen.
I could get out a towel every time I enter the kitchen.
We could switch to using paper towels.
We can hire a maid or a cook.
At this point, it's getting expensive. We better stop brainstorming. So we have brainstormed, step number 5. Now going on to step number 6 is where you get to discuss and evaluate. This is where you get to talk about, in a very kind way, what things might be best. Probably not best to jump on the terrible ideas. Hey, let's go right to number 3. That was a dumb idea. But you evaluate. You look over the list. You look at things to see if it's a possible solution to the problem. Could it work? Might it work? And figure out what makes the most sense. So with the towel, what makes the most sense?
Probably not logical or feasible to get everybody else out of the kitchen. So that probably is not a good idea.
And probably not logical to get out a new towel every time a man leaves the kitchen.
Or get a new towel every time I come to the kitchen, do a lot of laundry. What about color-coded towels?
That could work. It would need to be something that I could remember. I don't have my notes in front of me. I forget what step 7 is. I'm about to go there.
We're just discussing possible solutions.
All right. Well, I think the possibility of buying a man towel seems to make sense. A memorable, colorful towel. So we discussed, we put different ideas, and now it's the place where we
Agree on them. So we've looked at them, we've decided what's feasible, what's practical, what's doable, what we can see might work. So we've agreed that,
I think we should buy some man towels.
okay, now,
They sell them on eBay.
I don't have to like the decision. Neither of us have to like the decision. We don't even have to think it would work. We just have to be willing to try it. So I'm not so sure if this is going to work because we've tried different things and I'm not sure if we'll ever find a solution. But I'm willing to give this a try because maybe if he buys it, he'll recognize it and then he'll know which one this is.
I'm actually okay on step number 7. You agree to try an idea that your spouse is that you know won't work. Don't tell him you know it won't work, but you can secretly sit back there and maybe you'll be surprised to find out something that does work that you didn't expect would work. And if not, we need to try something else.
Mm-hmm. So we don't want to do criticizing, like you said, you don't want to say it out loud, and we want to try and avoid even thinking it maybe, but to be open to trying something, that even if you aren't sure, think it may not work, to try it, because you can't find a solution if you're not willing to try some solution. So we agreed that he's going to buy these towels, but I wanted to, maybe that's in the next one, I was going to say I wanted to clarify something, but I think it's in the next one, so I'll wait.
All right. Step number 8. Agree on how each of you will work towards this solution. Typically in most solutions, both of you will do something. And so you want to be specific. What is it that each of you needs to do? What do I need to do? What does she need to do? And so as I look at the list here, I think I'm going to buy towels. I think that's something that I should do.
Is there anything really that I need to do here, if that's the solution?
Probably not. I think if I buy the towels, that's probably good enough.
I guess I do have one question. Who is responsible to wash them?
Wash? Did your towels get washed? I think that it's fair that if anyone at any point thinks that any of the man towels need to be washed, then you put them on.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Good has been done here. All right, step number 9.
Set up another meeting to discuss your progress. Before leaving the discussion, you want to set a time where you can come back to reevaluate. Has this worked? Was it successful? The choice that we made to try out, is it working for us, or are there still problems that we need to address? Because if we don't set a time to come back, then we get back in the cycle of it never getting addressed, never getting to a conclusion that's workable for us. So we want to, depending on whatever the issue is, it could be a week later, it could be a month later, 6 months later, depending on what it is they're addressing. But make sure to set that time so you'll remember to come back and evaluate whether it's been successful or not.
And if we were going through this, we would have done that. I don't know, it would have been a week or 2 weeks. We actually did this for the first time in a marriage presentation like this a year or 2 ago. And our homework was to go into buy man towels in between marriage presentations, and we debriefed at the next one. But this is old news now.
It was successful for us.
I bought 3 sports themed golf towels and took the stitching out of them. Those immediately I know that is the towel for me. And it gets washed periodically, and I did find out that Joshua used it. That kind of went, he needs his own towel. But we haven't bought him a towel. Step number 10, reward each other as you contribute towards the solution. And I think it was stated in the last one, if you haven't come to a successful outcome, you cycle back, you go through the items.
Steps again.
You have to go back to the brainstorming and choose a different area that might work better. I think that it's been a good solution, plus I got some cool towels out of it. But in truth and honesty, this is something that can be used in any kind of a disagreement. This was a fairly simple thing. But when you have something that you cycle through over and over and over again,